What's the real story behind vaccines? Are they the miracle medicine that's saving lives and stopping pandemics? Or is there something else going on, like powerful pharmaceutical companies pulling the strings behind the scenes? With the recent pandemic putting vaccines in the spotlight, this question has never been more relevant. In today's video, we're diving into the world of vaccines to explore both sides, the life-saving power they hold and the potential influence of the pharmaceutical industry. Let's break it down. Is the truth somewhere in the middle, or is something darker at play? The miraculous impact of vaccines. First things first, vaccines do save lives. We've seen it with diseases like polio, measles, and smallpox, diseases that once caused massive suffering and death. Thanks to vaccines, many of these diseases are now either completely eradicated or extremely rare. Even COVID-19, as devastating as it has been kept in check because of vaccines. They've allowed us to get back to some level of normalcy faster than we could have imagined. But here's the catch. Vaccines don't just appear out of thin air. They are products of a massive, multi-billion-dollar industry. And that's where things start to get a little murky. When we talk about miracle medicine, we can't ignore the role the pharmaceutical companies play in creating, promoting, and distributing these vaccines. After all, someone's making a lot of money from them, right? Pharmaceutical lobbying. The invisible hand. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Pharmaceutical lobbying. If you think that the vaccine industry is only about saving lives, think again. Pharmaceutical companies are some of the biggest spenders when it comes to lobbying. That is, influencing government policies and decisions. They spend millions of dollars every year on lobbying efforts to sway lawmakers, regulatory bodies, and even public health strategies. Take the example of COVID-19 vaccines. Governments around the world were scrambling to secure as many doses as possible for their citizens. Pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca were under intense pressure to develop and distribute vaccines. But here's the thing, they weren't just racing against the virus, they were racing against each other, trying to secure the most lucrative deals with governments. And in this scramble, we saw some strange things happening. In the rush to produce a vaccine, some questions were raised about the speed at which these vaccines were developed and tested. While many were eager for a quick solution, some critics argued that the process was rushed, leaving room for potentially serious side effects to slip through the cracks. In the background, pharmaceutical companies were pushing hard to get their product to market first, and often getting preferential treatment in the process. It's not just COVID-19 either. Look back at the 2009 H1N1 pandemic. The pharmaceutical giant Roche used aggressive lobbying tactics to push governments to stockpile Tamiflu, an antiviral drug, despite some later evidence suggesting the drug wasn't as effective as claimed. This led to a massive stockpile that many questioned in hindsight. So, when we ask, are vaccines a miracle medicine? We have to ask, how much of this is driven by the need to save lives, and how much is driven by profit? The power play. Who decides what gets approved? Here's another question to consider. Who gets to decide which vaccines make it to the public? It's not just scientists in labs. It's a mix of government agencies, regulators, and yes, pharmaceutical companies. The decision-making process is influenced by a lot of factors, and not all of them are purely scientific. Regulatory agencies like the FDA in the US or the EMA in Europe are supposed to be looking out for the best interests of public health. But let's be real, they're under constant pressure from the pharmaceutical industry. In fact, a lot of the research these agencies rely on comes from the very companies that stand to profit the most from approval. This creates a kind of revolving door between industry and regulatory bodies, where former executives from big pharmaceutical companies end up in positions of influence at government agencies. This tight relationship between industry and regulators raises serious concerns. Can we be sure that the decision to approve a vaccine isn't influenced by the commercial interests of the companies making them? And when governments sign huge contracts for vaccine supply, how much of that is about securing the best deal for public health and how much of it is about securing the best deal for the pharmaceutical companies? The vaccine marketplace, a seller's game. Let's talk about the business side of vaccines. This is where things get tricky. In a perfect world, vaccines will be priced based on the costs of research, development, and distribution. But that's not always the case. The reality is that pharmaceutical companies set prices based on what they can get away with, and sometimes they charge way more than what's reasonable. Think about it. During a pandemic, governments are desperate to secure vaccines. This creates a seller's market where pharmaceutical companies can charge sky-high prices. And we've seen this time and time again. Governments sign contracts for billions of dollars to secure enough doses. often without fully knowing the long-term effectiveness or potential side effects of the vaccine. One of the biggest criticisms of this system is the lack of transparency. Governments don't always disclose the terms of these contracts. So, how do we know if we're getting a fair deal? And what happens when the vaccine that's been fast-tracked for approval isn't as effective as we hoped? Well, that's a risk we take, because in the world of vaccines, timing is everything, and the pressure to get something, anything, to market quickly often means cutting corners. Vaccine equity. Who gets what? Here's another issue we can't ignore: vaccine equity. During the COVID-19 pandemic, while wealthy countries locked in deals for millions of vaccine doses, many poorer countries were left scrambling. Pharmaceutical companies were, unsurprisingly, focusing on the countries that could pay the most. The result? Rich nations secured enough doses for their populations, while many developing nations had to wait months, even years, to get their hands on vaccines. This is a perfect example of how pharmaceutical lobbying affects global health. When profit drives the decisions about who gets vaccinated and when, we're left with a system that prioritizes wealth over need. Shouldn't vaccines be a global public good, available to everyone regardless of their income? But in today's world, vaccines are often treated as commodities to be bought and sold, just like any other product. The future of vaccines. A new era of medicine? So, where does this leave us? Are vaccines truly a miracle medicine? Or are they just another tool used by powerful pharmaceutical companies to further their business interests? The truth is, it's complicated. Vaccines save lives, and they've played a huge role in controlling pandemics throughout history. But we also have to acknowledge the role that corporate interests play in shaping the vaccines we get, how quickly they're released, and who gets access to them. The future of vaccines is uncertain, but one thing is clear: we need more transparency. We need to ensure that public health, not profit, is the driving force behind vaccine development and distribution. And we need to demand that governments and pharmaceutical companies work together, not just for the good of the wealthy, but for the good of everyone. What do you think? Are vaccines truly the miracle medicine we've been led to believe? Or is there more going on behind the scenes? Are pharmaceutical companies making decisions based on what's best for our health? Or are they more focused on securing their profits? It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer. But one thing is for sure: we need to keep asking these questions. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more discussions on the big issues that impact us all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.